But we're going to wrap up this episode, Ethan, with a little bit of a list. We haven't done lists in a while. This is just something fun that came into my head here. We're
Lists.
like I said, we're trying to think of stuff to do right now, Ethan.
Honestly.
So what I decided to come up with is our top 5
Mm.
Spurs on the roster as of right now, just based on potential, like their overall projection, where we think they could be. And when I came up with this idea, Ethan, I was like, oh, this will be interesting. I wonder what it'll be. But then when I got to listing the players, it was actually pretty easy. But the list is still pretty fun to talk about. And I think it represents the potential that the Spurs have moving forward whenever it comes to their young core. So I'll let you go off rip, Ethan, since I already made my list. Do you want to go one by one? Do you want to start from bottom
Oh.
top? Like, how do you want to go with this? You want to start 5? You want to start 1? Do you want to do all 5? Go. I think we should do one at like both go one by one.
Okay. Do you want to start at 5 or 1?
We should, yeah. Let's do 5. We can
Okay.
kind of lead up. Obviously, well, actually, let's do 1 down because 1 is actually the most like that's the easiest to guess. Now that I think about it,
True.
yeah.
At 1, Victor Wembanyama, the big man from France. Do I need to explain why? I mean, he's 7'4", 8-foot wingspan, can handle the ball like Kevin Durant, can pull up from mid-range, 3-point range, can score at all 3 levels, has a post-up ability. We saw the bank shots in Summer League. He's going to average 4 blocks a game right off the rip. That's not even a problem. All he has to do is put on a little bit of muscle, and it looks like he's been doing that. He's been in the gym, and he's been away from his phone. It seems like he has not been social media active. So, the sky is literally the limit. He is the extraterrestrial, according to Nike. So space is the limit for him.
I ain't got nothing else to say, and I just wanted you to say it because, I needed to hear it from you once more, Ethan.
I can't wait to see him, bro.
I'm so excited to watch him play. And also, I did see a report from Mark Stein from the Stein line. Used to be a reporter for the New York Times. I think he might still be, although they disbanded their sports department recently, so I don't know. But still, has a Substack, mainline NBA reporter. He said that tentatively. I don't know with the preseason, but for the regular season debut, Victor Wembanyama, as of right now, is good to go against the Mavericks, October 26th. Saw that on Real GM today.
It's against the Mavericks?
Mm-hmm.
In San Antonio or in...
I do not know. Let me check that right now because you should know that. Actually,
if it's in Dallas, your boy is there.
Let me see. Oh my goodness.
Pause the list for one moment while we figure this out. Please be
pulling it up.
in Dallas.
Oh my Ronnie. Nice job updating the schedule, NBA.
What, they didn't update it?
It says no games are available at this time. Stop. Oh my goodness.
I thought I checked not too long ago, so that's why I was like baffled that I'd missed that.
Okay, here we go. Here's ESPN. Oh, they say no data available. This is so... Oh my goodness.
It'll be announced in a bit.
Basketball Reference.
Maybe they haven't announced where it is.
That's probably why he reported that. Okay, well, here, let me at least just go. Let me show the people what we're talking about so I don't just seem like somebody who's just saying something.
You would, Jude. You would.
Without not saying it. It's so funny. You're right. I literally actually don't have any reason to pull this up, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay. Here we go. There we go. So y'all probably see it right there. It's at the very top. Victor Wembanyama scheduled to debut on October 25th versus the Mavs. If I go and click on it, it's just Victor Wembanyama, the NBA debut, the 25th. Y'all see Mark Stein of Substack. If y'all want to look up who Mark Stein is, y'all can go ahead and do it. He's been covering the NBA for forever, and that would probably make sense that he put it out in his Substack article before the schedule was actually released.
Yeah, okay.
But good for you to know. Don't know if it's home or away yet, Ethan, but definitely something to keep an eye on for sure.
Please be here.
Okay, so back to our list. Obviously, Victor at number 1. You said it all. There was the Nike program that he just did. Oh, I just wanted to touch on, this is what I wanted to touch on. The fact that he really has gone radio silent. Like we really saw him go away for a month. And then like now it's like the past 2 days, I saw the Nike ad where he's promoting all their new like jumpsuits, because he's the extraterrestrial,
Mm-hmm.
he's the future. So they're marketing him with all their new stuff that they come out with. But then on top of that, also the hair vid as well. Like you didn't hear a blip other than the past 2 days. And when you think about it, that's about a month since the
Yeah,
draft, a little bit over a month actually. So um, I'm glad to see him come out of his hole, but I'm also glad he was there. If
me
that makes
too.
sense.
I liked it.
All right, our second most valuable Spur, Ethan. The floor is yours.
Devin Vassell.
Ooh, interesting. Give me your reasoning.
I'm really high on Devin Vassell, and I think he plays a position and has the skill set to be an all-star, to be a prolific scorer, to be in the same conversation as guys like Devin Booker, Klay Thompson. You can throw Bradley Beal in there.
Damn.
I mean, I'm really high on him. I know he only averaged about 19 points a game this year on an injury-ridden season, but he has come back every season bigger, literally stronger, and better in every statistical category. Defensively, we know who he is. We know he's that guy. He came into the league as a 3-and-D guy, and now he's a 3-level scorer that can also lock up your best perimeter player. So just keep working on efficiency and get more shots. I mean, he could be, I don't want to say that. He could be the Robin to Victor Wembanyama's eventual Batman once he hits that ceiling.
Yeah, I'm really high on Devin too. It's hard for me to. I really like the Devin Booker comparison. Um, I also agree that he has the ability to be an all-star and has the ability to be a prolific scorer. And when you look at the way that he's developed so far as a lottery pick, um, you only expect him. He didn't even really get to show it last year. That's the
Yeah.
crazy thing, because he only played 39 games. And that's why he felt so much like the most consistent player on the team, Ethan, because we saw him in shorter bursts. And I know that may seem counterintuitive, but because we saw him in shorter bursts, and you would think that when you're in shorter bursts, it would be harder for you to get in rhythm. And we saw maybe a little bit of that here and there, like on his first 2 games back when he would come back, when he had the big layoff, right? Or no,
Mm-hmm.
he was done for the season after that, right? Or did he come back?
I don't actually remember.
But regardless, still, there were times where he took, even before the big surgery, with the way that we operated this season, there would be times where he'd take 2 to 3 games off. And then, but that was all the guys. When you're not getting in rhythm and you're not playing consistently, you're going to have to shake the rust off, those
Mm-hmm.
first couple games. Look at Victor Wembanyama's first summer league game. But going back to just his overall skill set and his potential, I'm blanking. I really tried to save it there, Ethan, and I blanked where I was at.
I'll
I
say
know we're
for
talking
you.
about Devin.
Rip Hamilton. That's all you got to say. My guy is a better Rip Hamilton.
Oh
He doesn't
boy.
even need a mask. That's how good he is.
Yeah. I honestly, I have nothing to add. I think he's going to be really good. There's just something else I forget. I felt that his playmaking as well. I really felt like that took a jump this year, and this is really what I was getting back to earlier. And that's the fact that because we saw him in such short stints, this is what I was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like he was more consistent in the short stints, so we saw him for less. And
I know what you're saying. There was not
yeah,
a gaping hole. Like we only saw him for so little time, so that we don't really remember any glaring negative
yes,
games or bad performances that would have harped on
we
his potential.
yes, exactly. We didn't get to, because we didn't see him for a full season. We didn't see, some of the mistakes that we might have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but still, the flip side of that, Ethan, is that whenever you're not playing consistently and you're playing at that high a level in the 39 games that you do play, like that's also really hard to do too. So that ties into just all of the stuff that you were talking about. It felt like he turned into a walking bucket last year, and he was already an above average defender with length and switchability. And when I say he's a walking bucket, it's like you could just throw him into any scenario, regardless of the rust or the lineup, because we know that was completely different from, game to game last year. And he was doing the same thing every time. And it was consistent in the short bursts. So it just, like you said, it was very impressive on a multitude of levels last year. And he's basically already at, I mentioned this in the some video we did this summer talking about the shooting guards. I think it was the first position breakdown we did. And he's basically already at 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists after last season. It was like 18, 4-4 is where he was at, basically. But still, most games, obviously have a down game here and there. He was around, and sometimes it was closer to 25, 5-5. And when you think about those numbers, that's what it spits Devin Booker. He's like Devin Booker who can play defense. I know he's still got ways to go, or some seasons under his belt to get where Devin is offensively. The other Devin, that is Devin Booker. But man, you can see the potential in his off the dribble scoring on top of the defense we already had seen.
1,000%. And what's your number 2?
So it is not Devin. I have Jeremy Sohan as my number 2. And that's just because overall potential, that I think he has the second highest ceiling on the team. I know I've only seen one season of him. I think his height, his size, and his versatility in everything. I know I use that phrase a lot, obviously, when it comes to his defense, but we've talked about it so many times on this podcast, Ethan, his ability to get better everywhere, the little, the strides that we saw in so many different areas. I don't think, like, for this example, I didn't see all of the type of stuff that I saw from Jeremy in his rookie season. And granted, Devin wasn't starting in his rookie season and was playing a lot in Austin as well. So that's a key factor. But, it took until this past season for Devin to really be able to be comfortable with his ball handling. You know what I'm saying? I'm seeing that from Jeremy this year. And then on top of that, I'm seeing his jump shot go from me thinking it never has any hope to he might have a chance to be a 30% 3-point shooter. And now, like 30% isn't, otherworldly, but, I went from thinking he had no chance of having any potential there to, okay, Jeremy might be able to be a guy that if they leave him open, he's going to make them pay most of the time. And that's kind of what he turned into at the end of the year. Now, granted, that's still, somewhere in the 20s percentage wise, but still, like, there were just, on top of, his IQ, the way that he learned the offense, the way that he was able to incorporate a little bit more of some post ups. Obviously, as the season progressed, we saw him taking the ball up the floor a little bit more. Just all these little different things that I haven't seen. I have not seen a Spurs rookie do all of the different types of things he does in a long time. And granted, a lot of that, like, as I'm thinking about that, the other person who was popping into my head was Kawhi, but it's like the situation that Kawhi was in, it was like, go play defense. We've already got all these other guys who know the offense, who can score. Jeremy being on, the team that was, tanking last year. And then on top of that, being a rookie and getting the opportunity to start, which is also completely unheard of in San Antonio. The opportunity that he had and the circumstances that he was in, allowed him to showcase a lot of the stuff that he got to showcase. So maybe there might be some other Spurs rookies in the past that could have been able to do the things that he did, but because the scenarios were different, I haven't seen a Spurs rookie do that in my lifetime. So, I'm not mad at all for you putting Devin at number 2. And really, honestly, I think 2 through 3 could be interchangeable.
For sure.
As we'll continue to move on with some of the other guys. But for me, when it just comes to overall outlook, potential for their career, I do have Jeremy a little bit ahead of Devin. But I have Devin at number 3. So I won't talk about Devin at number 3 since you already talked about him. But give me your number 3, Ethan, who may be Jeremy Sohan, but maybe it's somebody else.
Well, you're right about 2 through 4. The difference between 2 through 4 is minuscule. So, if your list varies from ours, so be it. You probably have just as strong of argument as I do. But 3 for me would be Jeremy Sohan for all the reasons that you mentioned, the versatility, really being a Swiss Army knife. The only reason I have Devin above him at 2 is I think Jeremy, while he does have that Kawhi-esque ability, that ceiling that he could eventually reach, where he can score at all 3 levels on top of being an incredible defender and on top of having just better measurables than a Devin Vassell and being more physically imposing, which would put him obviously as a better player. Like, I understand that. But at the same time, he also has a higher chance than Devin of becoming a role player in a sense, only because he does all of those different things. So he wouldn't necessarily be a 25 a game scorer. Like, he has that potential as well. He could fall into that Draymond Green category, which there's nothing wrong with that. Draymond Green is a Hall of Fame player. Like, he is a champion. There's so many great things you could talk about Draymond Green. But when you're ranking the big 3 with Golden State, it's Steph, Clay, Draymond. And is Draymond more valuable than Clay? Probably. But if you're looking back on numbers and, all-star appearances, Clay probably has a better career and just strictly a better scorer, better shooter. So that's where I would give Devin the nudge as far as potential over Jeremy. But you're right. I mean, it could go either way because Jeremy does, like you said, have that Kawhi level defense, and he has improved so drastically from game 1 of last season to game 82 of last season in so many different areas, predominantly scoring as in the post as well as off the dribble and as a spot up shooter. So, I love Jeremy Sohan. I'm excited to see what he can do. I disagree only in one thing that you said. I think his ball handling needs to get a lot better. I mean, I know he brought the ball up every once in a while last year, but that's, to me, his most glaring deficiency, even worse than his shooting. I think if he improves as a ball handler, he is immediately worlds better in so many different ways. And if he's better at shooting, that really just improves one thing, shooting. But if he's a better ball handler, it improves every facet of his game.
Yeah, as much as I talked about his playmaking, and I'm thinking about, and I was talking about like him taking the ball up the floor as the season progressed, and those little stints. Like we've talked about it before, where I was watching some of the overall top plays from the season, and Dan Weiss is like point Sohan, right? Because we saw that a little bit more as the season progressed. But I still agree with you there whenever it comes to his ball handling. Like I said, I'm not trying to be super contradictory here because
Mm-hmm.
we did see him distribute this season. We saw him
Yes,
make
for
some great
sure.
passes. But at the same time, we also saw him lose the ball a lot as well too. I remember not just I mean there are some plays where he brought the ball up and he got ripped because he was just a little bit too lenient with his dribble. He lets his dribble, go almost up to his shoulder sometimes. And these are
Yep,
super nitpicky things, but it's like, they're also NBA players. But it's like those are the type of little things whenever it comes to his ball handling that caused turnovers for us this past season. So I would definitely like to see him clean that up a little bit because with the playmaking ability he already has, Ethan, like you said, it's almost more important for him to get that down than shooting because then you can get everything out of the playmaking ability that you already have. Where with shooting, he kind of has to build that ability up. You know what I'm saying?
for sure. 1000%. And if he's a better ball handler, he's immediately, in my eyes, he can be small forward. He can play that Kawhi Leonard, Scottie Pippen role. And then he can work on his jump shot because it's not terrible. Like, it will go in if he's wide open.
We also saw the improvement last season, and that's the
Yeah,
thing. Like whenever it comes to him, the reason like why I had him at number 2 is because like when I see the little improvements he made last season in so many different areas, it gives me confidence that he can continue to do that in like all those little areas for the rest of his career. So when I
1000%.
think of that, I'm like, okay, in 2028, like you said, he might be a 3 level scorer. You never know. But at the same time, Ethan, what I would like to say, and I totally get where you're coming from, and I just thought of it more whenever you were talking, is just straight up, Devin's offensive and defensive games are just like way more established. Like his offensive game specifically is
Hmm.
like check mark for both of those. Where with Jeremy, as of right now, it's just check mark on defense. And that kind of ties into also you kind of saying that there might be a higher chance that he could turn into a role player, even though he has the potential to be an all-star. Um, and I mean, we've heard the Manu comparison, and
Hmm.
that's about. I mean, he was talking about his tenacity. Pop was in that comment, but still, with what we just addressed, maybe there's an opportunity for Jeremy to kind of be the heir to that throne. Um, especially with his history as a six man at Baylor as well and his skill set, like you talked about. But who knows?
True.
We don't know. We've talked about it so many times. I definitely think he's a starting caliber player and a franchise caliber player. That's why I had him at number 2. But I still get where you're coming from and understand your argument for putting Devin at number 2. And that leads us to number 4, who is another guy. I feel like we're going to have the same guy here, and he's somebody else that we believe could kind of be number 2 or number 3 on this list, depending on how the season goes, and that's Keldon Johnson. Ethan, is that who you had at number 4?
It's not who I had at
It's
number 4.
not who you had at number 4. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm sure probably who I had at number 5 is you had at number 4, but I had Keldon at number 4. Man, dang it.
I have him at 5.
I was kind of, I thought for a second you were going to have him at 3, actually. But yeah, I have Keldon at 4, man. We've talked about it so many times on this channel. The sentence I think that can sum up everything, Ethan, is we think Keldon gets too much hate.
For sure.
That I think he has the potential to be an all-star caliber player. Is he a perennial all-star? I don't know about that. But I think definitely there could be a circumstance in a team that he could be on where he could be an all-star. Also, if he continues his improvement and has another 25-7 season and is one of the best players on this team, he might be able to prove me wrong, because that's the other thing about Keldon, which is the same theme with the rest of these guys, and that's that he's got better every year. This was probably the first year, like in a specific category, we saw him take like a step back, like after jumping up. And that's of course just his shooting, with the way that the beginning of the season went and then how the rest of the season went. But other than that, he was the leader of the team. It's the same theme that we've had from Keldon every year in his career so far. It's just now he was the most experienced and oldest guy on the team that had a significant role. I mean, well, I guess Zach is older than him, but what I'm trying to say is he was the eldest Spur. How about that? Let's put it that way. Who's been here the longest out of the young guys and the crew that we have. I've said so much about Keldon so many times. I don't really think there's much else to say here, other than just what he did for the team this season and how he has experience in that leader role on top of his talents and just being committed to whatever the Spurs throw at him. There's been a comment recently. This will be the last thing I'll say about Keldon, Ethan. There's all this speculation about him going to the bench, and that's why I kind of opened it up with we feel like he gets too much hate. But the thing that he said when they asked him in a press conference about how you feel about coming off the bench, and if I'm Keldon in this situation, dude, I would have responded, well, I don't know. If I had the Spurs training, I probably would have responded pretty good. But the point is that Keldon Johnson had every right in that moment to be ticked off by that question. But instead, he was just like, I'll do whatever the team wants me to do because I play for them. And I just signed a contract. I just signed an $80 million contract with the Spurs. Like, it was almost like he answered the question like, do y'all not watch Spurs basketball? like he was literally just like, if the team wants me to come off the bench, I'm coming off the bench. Like it wasn't a discussion. It was just whatever the team wants me to do. Oh, y'all just let the lights go out.
In a way, you look kind of cool.
Don't worry. We'll fix it. You talk, Ethan. I'll be right back.
Yeah. The Keldon Johnson, I have him at 5, and Jude's probably surprised because I am a massive Keldon Johnson supporter. I love Keldon Johnson. I think he is incredibly disrespected. I think he did things for us last season that will go down in Spurs lore, but the average fan will not remember. He was by far and away the best player on the court for us last season. I don't think that's a question. Some people like Devin better than him. Obviously, I think Devin has a higher ceiling than Keldon, but last year, Keldon was a better player. This season, he has a very strong chance at being the best player on the court, even next to Wemby, because Wemby is still only 19 years old. He has not blossomed yet into what he will become. But next season, and maybe even the season after, Keldon Johnson has a strong likelihood of being the best player or the second best player on the team. He's an incredible finisher. He has made strides as a playmaker, as a shooter, despite slumps. But we think that that's really cause of him playing next to different guys every single night, being the only consistent player for us on the team. So I don't think that will be something that carries over in the next season. I think he will have solidified that, and playing against guys that can also draw to, like a Devin Vassell, a Jeremy Sohan, Trey Jones facilitating, that will just give him more open looks, and his numbers will kind of average out to what they were, which is closer to 40% than that they were last season. Um, but who I have at 4, Jude, is Malachi Branham.
Here, wait, before you start on Malachi, I just wanted to say one more thing on Keldon. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just that in all of the inconsistencies of this season, he was consistently getting us like close to 10 points in the clutch. That's the thing that like really
Yes.
gets me about Keldon. And it really, I understand it's a 22-win season, but it really frustrates me when I see all of the hate on Twitter or wherever, because it's like, this dude was literally like putting the team on his back in
Mm-hmm.
like the situation where you would be the least motivated to put the team on your back on the 22-60
Yes.
22-23 Spurs, and he did it every night. He did it no questions asked, and he did it with freaking passion. And
Mm-hmm.
people can say, oh well, passion's not, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. He was scoring in the clutch every night, putting his heart on the line like every single game, man. And that's why he averaged 22. That's why his scoring jumped
Mm-hmm.
so much. So anyways, I just wanted to say shout out to Keldon for that, because he really was in the trenches for us last year, man.
The big body will always have nothing but love and respect for that guy for what he did this season, no matter how the rest of his career may or may not turn out. Um,
But looking
but
forward.
why I have Malachi Branham at 4 over Keldon, and really why I have Devin, Malachi, and Jeremy over Keldon is simply two things: play style, and they're younger, so they have more opportunity to grow right now than what Keldon is, and he's not even old, but just comparatively. Um,
Right.
and play style wise, I just think Keldon has a play style where he will plateau faster than Devin, Malachi, and Jeremy, because he really is a slasher, and he is kind of, props to him, grown in every category. But when it comes down to it, what is he? He is
He's
a
a little
slasher.
limited.
Exactly, he's
He's very
limited.
good, but
Mhm.
limited, right?
Physically and in terms of play style. Like a player's play style is basically like their signature. Like you can't change that once it's set. You are who you are. You can get better in every category. You can be more efficient. You can become a better ball handler, a better shooter, but your play style is who you are. You can't change Kevin Durant. Like he is Kevin
Right.
Durant, and you can't change LeBron James. Keldon is Keldon. Malachi Branham has a similar play style to Devin Vassell, but I think he has a higher ceiling as far as playmaking than Devin Vassell. Where he lacks comparatively to Devin Vassell is simply defense. But Malachi Branham is already a 3-level scorer. He came into the league a better scorer than Devin Vassell did. Devin Vassell was probably a better 3-point shooter, just a straight up spot up 3-point shooter. But as far as playmaking, taking his guy off the dribble, coming off screens, finding his spots in the mid range, or finding the roll man, the weak side corner, Malachi has all those nuances pretty much down. And similarly to Jeremy Sohan, he improved tremendously from game 1 to game 82. He became, at times, our most valuable player, especially when Devin was out and he was having to fill in the shoes. And then, God forbid, when Trey Jones was out and he was playing starting point guard, he showed us things, you and I, Jude, that we did not expect from him coming out of Ohio State. But when really we should have, because of how much he improved from game 1 at Ohio State to his last game at Ohio State. He really
Yeah.
flipped a switch and became a different player, just like he did for us last season. So, there also another reason why Jeremy and Devin might be a little bit higher on the potential ceiling than him is simply he's got Devin Vassell in front of him, right? So he's, at least for now, going to be coming off the bench. And so that will put a cap on his potential. Like, I know, like, Manu Ginobili probably could have made a lot more All-Star games, probably could have
Yeah.
averaged a lot more points. But because there was Tony Parker and Tim Duncan, and, he just kind of had to come off the bench because he
Mm-hmm.
was the odd man out, it limited his personal accolades. And I think when we're talking about potential, that's what we're really talking about, is when it's all said and done, who will have the best
Right.
personal accolades as far as a resume going into the Hall of Fame. And I think because of that, Malachi just might be missing a few medals and trophies on his mantle that Devin and Jeremy and Victor might have.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that like super long term, but that's exactly how we're thinking about the list too. So,
Hmm.
I mean, that obviously that's how I was thinking about it, but I mean like the accolades part
Yeah.
specifically. Um, I had Malachi at number 5. So we had the same 5 overall. And
Hmm.
honestly, even before you started talking, Ethan, just when you were right at the beginning of when you started talking, when I realized it wasn't Keldon that you had at number 4, I kind of just the wheels in my brain started churning a little bit, and I can just see where you're coming from. Not to be like I still have Keldon at number 4, but just when you think about, okay, let's just be objective here. Malachi was 19 last year. Did we see what we saw from Malachi from Keldon in Keldon's rookie season? And I know that the G League thing and the different type of
Hmm.
team, that's still a key point, but still even even in that scenario, we didn't see what Malachi showed this year at 19 years old from Keldon's rookie season. I mean, I think even if the scenario was the same, we wouldn't have seen the same thing.
Hmm.
Not to say that their numbers might not be similar, because Keldon actually kind of translated pretty well, because he was
Yeah.
just like, I'm just gonna throw myself into the
Yeah.
into the paint and I'll score most of the time because I'm Keldon and big. Anyways, but like that ties into the slasher limitations that you were just talking about. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's why and that also ties in to how it took sometimes coming in and translating immediately doesn't mean that you're going to have the higher ceiling.
Hmm.
Malachi is the perfect example of that. You talk about how his season at Ohio State went. It took him a little to get his feet wet, or it took him a little bit of time to get his feet wet, get comfortable, and then he was a 20-point scorer, one of the winning Big Ten freshman of the year, and won a couple March Madness games.
Hmm.
What did we see from him this season? Shot looked flat to start the year. The spots were never bad, but the execution just wasn't there. Man, by the All-Star break, boy was it. You
Hmm.
know, on top of the playmaking ability that he got to showcase, with the Trey injury. And I mentioned, the lineups earlier, Ethan, and how I was just writing down, everything, all the possible potentialities, because we just have no idea going into this year. One thing I think we could think about a little bit more, just for Spurs fans to have in their brain, is him being the point guard.
Yeah.
Um, you never know what the best lineup could be. But I think we can all agree that Malachi has a higher potential than Trey. As much as I love Trey, if we're just being objective whenever it comes to their ceilings, and it makes sense. Malachi was a projected lottery guy, and Trey was a second round pick. And I mean, think about it. I mean, if you want to have the best 5 on the court, I mean, maybe Malachi ends up being the starting point guard this year. I mean, I don't think that that's going to happen, but we're talking about campaign, and we're talking about Devonte Graham and all that stuff, and I definitely do think, if it came down to it right now, I would have Devin as the starting 2, and then Malachi as the backup 2, just kind of for scoring purposes and 6-man purposes. But we don't know what's in the head of Greg Popovich and the Spurs front office. And, with the way that they experimented with lineups last year, and with the freedom that you now have with a player like Victor Wembanyama,
Hmm.
and on top of that, the experience that Malachi showed last year as a combo guard. And then also, I forget to mention this enough. When I went and watched that Ohio State tape, he also, as the season progressed, kind of had the ball in his hands more there as well.
Hmm.
That could be a little bit more of a realistic possibility. But with his spot up shooting ability and his scoring ability, I still think he's a much more natural 2. But when you're playing next to a guy like Devin Vassell, um, and you have Malachi's skill set, and you take into account he's a little bit, not very much, but just a little bit smaller than Devin, that might be the best avenue, to get him on the court and get the most out of him. And think about the amount of shooters that would be on the floor. See, I'm just talking this whole time, Ethan,
Hmm.
and I didn't even have him, at number 4. But all of the stuff I'm talking about right now it's just making me realize, and understand where you're coming from, putting him at number 4.
And like we said before, everyone's list is probably going to be different, just like varied a little bit. So like,
Right.
there's an argument for everyone being at a different position. The only guy that is set for sure is that 7'4"
Yeah.
extraterrestrial Victor Wembanyama. And speaking about Malachi being a point, this will be my last point.
Yeah.
Um, we could see some lineups, and I don't know how often we would see this. This would have to be against a team that lacked a big, strong, center.
Yeah.
But we could play Malachi, Devin, Keldon, Jeremy. Vic,
Yeah.
like from time to time.
That was the exact lineup I was thinking. And I know that we've talked about in the past, and I still, when I look at the tape, I still think if I had to choose, I'm just like, I don't think Victor's gonna consistently. I don't think Victor's gonna play the five. But man, that lineup, think about it, like a Malachi, Devin,
Mm-hmm.
Keldon, Sohan, like that's really those are your five guys on this list.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. Like those are your best five. If you really want your best five out there, Malachi's probably gonna have to play a little point guard. But I'm not mad at that at all, especially with what he showed last year. So yeah, I think, like you said, I agree with you. I think the list will vary, but I think for the most part, most Spurs fans would have Victor Wembanyama. And I don't mean in this order. Obviously, Victor will be number one, but they'd have some combination when it comes to their five. Who are your five? Most potential Spurs or Spurs with the most potential moving forward. It's definitely going to be Keldon, Devin, Malachi, Jeremy, and Victor for sure.
We'll have some haters out there that'll drop KJ and
Oh yeah.
they'll put Blake Wesley in
Who
there,
are they
or
gonna? If you're dropping Keldon, it better be Dominic.
D Barlow. Yeah, D Barlow's got a lot of potential.
Yo, speaking of, let me stop. Okay, but actually, another thing on lineups, and this is my final point. If there's an injury that happens, like I was telling you how in a lot of the lineups, it looks like Mamu. If Jeremy's not going to be the backup four, it looks like Mamu's going to be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an injury, we really might be seeing our boy Barlow as the backup four. And to be honest with you, I'd kind of be excited with it after the summer league. The pick and pop now, I'm like, that would be pretty good. But that's why he's on a two-way, Ethan.
Mm-hmm.
45 days if we need him, baby. And he's going to come in and ball.
I love him. Let's see it. Throw him in there next to Vic.
So just to recap, Ethan, give me your list.
I had from 1 to 5. I had Victor Wembanyama, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, Malachi Branham, Keldon Johnson.
And then I had Victor Wembanyama, Jeremy Sohan, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, and Malachi Branham. Tell us y'all's top 5 in the comments below.